Sherry, what's going on? We have another great guest.
We have a great guest today, and it's going to be an interesting conversation with Dr. Ron Stotts. Welcome, Dr. Stotts. And
Hi.
a little bit about him is he is an inspirational speaker, and he guides business leaders on transformational inner journey of creating their inspired personal and professional lives. And don't we all need some inspiration, Dr. Stotts? So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right,
Yeah, so
fantastic.
you are a three-time best-selling author, and you have a PhD in psychology, and you're a doctor of chiropractic.
I am.
So, and you have a lot of different topics of experience that as I was going through, and I like them. I mean, authentic leadership. That's a really good conversation. Is authentic leadership, because a lot of times within an organization, I think collapses can happen because of the wrong leader. So talk to us about, put it in your context, the authentic leadership.
Yeah, many high achievers, they've built successful lives, but inside they don't sense their operating system. It's below their true capacity. And, so my work is helping people evolve their inner operating system so leadership becomes less about effort and more about alignment. Does that make, yeah.
Yeah. So why is that? What's the reason? Alignment. Define alignment for me.
In alignment with who you are, where you are in your life, with the capacities that you need access to successfully be living the life that you are living, be a leader that you're capable of and need to be in any particular organization. We're taught to change our behavior, learning to kind of act as if. I see a lot of programs out there that teach you how to act as if rather than, really shifting who you are. And so, you know, becoming more conscious and confident. But a real transformation happens when we actually change the level of consciousness that we're operating from. For me, the our level of consciousness determines, it's really determined by, or you can tell what level of consciousness you're in by how aware you are of your thoughts, how aware you are of your emotions, how you aware you are of how you're doing in life at any given time. Because, our level of consciousness actually determines how we see, experience, and react to everything that comes into our life. So, that's really, you know, you see leaders who are basically leading from a lower level of consciousness than they need to be on, so that they're not reacting to what's going on, and they're actually responding in supportive, conscious ways, bringing out the best in others and seeing opportunities when they're available, that type of thing.
Mhm.
But they're, you get them operating from unknowingly, I think, most of the time, from they're trying to perform or control or by proving themselves, or often even times from fear of losing status or being seen because they don't feel like they're enough. But, as and through the work that I'm doing, when their inner capacity expands, their leadership becomes really much, much more effortless and authentic. And that makes a huge difference.
Well, to me, everything you're saying in the awareness and, proactive versus reactive and authenticity, and what you're trying to teach, to me, it's like, okay, let's dig deep and become familiar with who you are so that you can act from that authentic self
Yeah.
instead of, you know, following a recipe on, a flow chart. They do this, therefore you do this. They don't do this, therefore you do this. It's kind of almost like a gut reaction, right? Because it comes from within you. And those are good leaders because I think they're more relatable to their staff.
Yeah.
And I think the staff, I mean, you can still respect someone while you kind of relate to them too. Would
Yeah.
you agree to that?
I'd certainly agree with that. Many of the high performers are actually they're performing. They're managing their impressions. They push through with pressure. They try to be enough. but they're not realizing what the cost of that is. And that's where you get burnout. That's where you get leaders that are not treating their people very well. It's not a weakness, it's just conditioning. They're just trying to take care of themselves. So I guess what makes what I do unique is, most personal development focuses on, as we were talking about, that on motivation or mindset or acting as if. And it's really about, as you suggested, becoming more self-aware, becoming more self-confident, becoming more authentic, and that deep transformation is really more neurological and emotional, and it actually involves rewiring, neurologically rewiring the brain, the subconscious patterns, and regulating the nervous system so that clarity becomes, natural rather than forced. And that involves some
There you
interesting
go.
things. I can go through all the things it involves if you wish, but yeah.
Yeah, definitely. We want to get kind of dive into that, but it's so important to look at those things because it's how we wire ourselves in leadership versus basically some formula or something. It's so much more.
Yeah, it is. And what I'm working with a lot now is I see we come into leadership and we have a certain capacity for understanding, a capacity for being compassionate, capacity for being in our power, and yet our leadership continues to grow, but our capacity doesn't. And so that's really a lot of times, I guess, what I'm really working with is helping them increase that capacity, bringing it up to speed in terms of where they are in their leadership. And of course, as they learn to do that, I also show them how to continue to increase that capacity so that it continues to grow with their leadership.
One topic I find really interesting, you touched upon it a little bit earlier, and I've studied it, that, it's not talked about. That's emotional intelligence. Like that is a thing. And you
Very
describe to
much so.
our listeners and viewers what exactly that emotional intelligence is.
Yeah, I mean, emotional intelligence is, we're all aware of, intellectual intelligence, and we recognize when somebody is smarter or not quite as smart, or where we stand and that sort of thing. Emotional intelligence is really the same thing. Emotional intelligence comes from our familiarity with, our comfort with our emotions. So oftentimes, the folks that I'm working with come in and, they really, as a child, they recognized, oh, I'm smart, and their parents and their teachers and others kind of gave them support and love and acceptance and everything in relationship to that intelligence. And so, they got into the right schools, they got the right jobs, and everything's going well. They think, okay, I've got this all figured out. But at some point, they realize that that intelligence isn't enough, because now they're in a place of leadership where they've got a lot of people they're working with, and so they need to be more aware of where those people are, what those people need, how to communicate with those people, how to bring out the best of them, ideally, in a leadership role. And so, they're just, if they're still caught into trying to prove themselves and trying to act in ways, to either control people or to get acceptance from people, then they're not being, as you were talking about, in that centered, confident, authentic place. So when they're coming in and seeing me, they're really coming, going, that's not working anymore. My intellect is still great, but it's not enough. And that's, yeah, the enough that they're looking for. They have to go deep within themselves and access more of who and what they are. And that begins with that inner journey of really beginning to look at, well, gee, as a child, what did you do to protect yourself? And they usually can identify those things pretty comfortably and or easily. And it's like, okay, so all of those things that you used as a child to protect yourself are now things that will sabotage your life. They'll limit your life. If you wanted to be, well, to get love and acceptance, I had to really be control my emotions, or if I really had to, as we were talking about being smart, or I had to be very fastidious and make sure I've got everything perfect. Those things later sabotage you because you can't ever do them perfect. You're caught in, you're just those are fear oriented, and that fear doesn't allow you to literally access higher levels of thinking. You're only using that left brain. You're not even using the bigger picture, emotionally oriented, spontaneous right brain. You're not developing that frontal cortex that's really designed to be the conscious CEO of your life. You're still being triggered by the amygdala, the emotional center that is more reactive than responsive. And so it's as they begin to explore their childhood and see the basic patterns that and beliefs that they have that no longer work for them, they're also becoming more comfortable with their feelings, and so they aren't things, when I was growing up, basically it wasn't safe for me to get angry. My parents didn't like anger. So that didn't get me more love, that got me less, and in the frame of, when I grew up, fear was not acceptable and, men weren't supposed to be afraid. So like, okay, well, I'll shove all my anger down, I'll shove all my fear down. And so, by the time I'm wandering into my 20s, I'm, you know, under control and not not really fully aware of who I am or why I am or why I'm reacting in the ways that I might be to various situations. So I had to go step back and go, okay, well, what are these feelings? I mean, I remember being in a workshop with a person who's now a close friend, and she was going, and Ron, what about your anger? And I'm like, what? I'm Mr. Spiritual, wonderful guy. I don't know any anger. By the end of the weekend workshop, I was fully aware of what she was talking about. And it's not that I had a lot of anger, but I was so afraid of expressing it that I kept it controlled so much that it didn't allow me to be me. And so, that's just normal. It's just part of our evolving, part of our evolution. And in leadership, you're on stage in a sense. You're in front of a lot of people. They have expectations. You need to be present and conscious of what you're doing. And all that emotional backlog, of course, keeps you from being present and conscious. So you go in, you heal those things up. It only takes a couple of months, quite literally. And then, that allows you to start opening up and developing that capacity to really be the leader that you're capable of being, which is more focused on bringing out, as I said earlier, the best of others, rather than trying to control everything and micromanage that type of thing.
Right. Controlling and micromanaging, how's that going to hurt you?
I remember I think it was the 80s. I was executive VP of an Intergame Corporation, and we were helping AT&T go through their divestiture from a monopoly to 5 for-profit organizations. And basically, that's exactly, what we were doing, is helping them understand that it was okay, for the managers to come up with ideas, to think outside the box, all of those things. And they had been trained for decades not to do those things. They all had their stories about, well, so and so thought outside the box 20 years ago, and that didn't work, and now he's, you know. So I remember having dinner with the 3 top guys of AT&T. We were, I had a drink, which I'm not a drinker, so that might have loosened me up a bit. But they said, "Well, what have you learned? You've been working with us now for about 9 or 10 months, and your programs are great. We're excited about what you're going to do. What's your bigger picture of what you've seen?" And I said, "Well, basically, you guys are dad, the managers are mom, and then all the employees are the kids. Mom and the kids are scared to death of you and afraid to think outside the box at all, afraid to think at all, let alone outside the box. And, because these 3 guys had been grown up, in the 50s and whatever, where leadership was about top-down control management style. And it was interesting to watch their reaction. They were kind of, it was a mix. But the truth was, I saw them really understand the truth of it, but I also saw them not willing to let go of that control. We ended up, they wanted to water down all the programs that we had designed that they were so excited about because they saw that, oh, that threatens my control, that threatens my capacity there. And I actually left the organization because of that, started my own company because I was so fed up with the limitations of leadership back then, especially in a corporate model. Yeah.
And teaching, I am, as I listen to you, I think, even back to my own life, like I think, this whole emotional intelligence and authenticity, a lot of times it's really an instantaneous thing. I remember when I was a young mom and I had I don't even remember who she was, and she came over with her daughter, and she's holding the baby, and I'm busy doing this and that and that. And she's just watching me, and she's like, you know, she says they're only young in this size for so long, but dust will be there forever. And that automatically, that was an epiphany, instantaneous epiphany. But then there's other things as you talk through that I feel like if you don't learn it earlier, at some point, some of us will learn it as we go through, and it, through wisdom. That's how you garner wisdom, is by learning these emotional intelligence, and you grow older and you mature, and you're trying to get them before they make the mistakes, like me,
Yeah.
right? And show them this is what you do now, so you can avoid making mistakes as you get older,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, unfortunately, a child wants love, unconditional love more than anything else, and they'll do whatever they need to do to get it. And that's who they become. What do I need to hide away? And so I'm acceptable. And what do I need to, develop so that I'm loved more? And so unfortunately, we keep looking outside of ourselves for that love and acceptance, and that how we design our life. And that doesn't work. I mean, it works to a point. You can have a relationship that you love each other, but it's kind of a B minus love as opposed to the A plus love that you can have if you're coming in really having learned to accept and love yourself fully. Because your relationship with yourself is going to be mirrored in your relationship with others, whether it's your partner or the teams you lead or whatever it might be. And so, yeah, it really comes down to that becoming emotionally aware, becoming self-aware, getting to a place where you accept who you are, not just on a logical, linear, sort of way, but on a deep sense of acceptance and love. And that's where your confidence and authenticity, your wholeness will come from.
That's key for
Yeah.
sure. What do you think if our viewers and listeners should think about when it comes to leadership? What qualities today should they start working on?
Well, I think most leadership challenges aren't strategy problems. And when people call me, they're always talking about the outer challenges and, the solutions they're looking for are always outside of themselves, but they're really identity transitions that they're going through that just haven't been completed. They really are, challenges within themselves that they're not identifying. I mean, it really, I get a discovery call and I listen to their story and all the outer things that they're talking about. And it doesn't take very long to ask them about, well, where do you see that pattern in your life? How long has that pattern been coming up in your life? They begin to go, oh, all my life. And oh, it started in childhood. And they begin to recognize that that inner child is running the show and that's not working out too well for them. So, it's really, if you're still trying to prove yourself, if you're still trying to succeed by controlling everything, then it's not going to work. I mean, all the research, all the leadership research shows that if you do that inner work, you become more self-aware, emotionally intelligent, as you were talking about, that your productivity and profits in your organization are going to increase at least 40 or 50%. With my clients, I actually see it even much, much greater than that because, maybe a bad analogy, but it came up for me. But, living where I do, we see Canadian geese going by. You'll see that they're in that big V shape with all the birds flying in together. And my wife was sharing some research she saw where when they fly in that large group as a V, they can go 70% further than a single Canadian goose could by itself. And that's because they're all in alignment, they're all supporting each other, they're all moving in the same direction. And I think that's if we can get ourselves in alignment, if we can get ourselves moving in one direction towards our highest intention, and we're clear about that, there's no sabotaging going on from that inner child or whatever aspect of ourselves that we haven't paid attention to, then we're going to move forward with more ease and less effort. But as we then create an organization where that's essentially the same situation, and all of a sudden that organization's much more cooperative, much more collaborative. People are sharing ideas, they're working together. So naturally, they start being more productive, and increased productivity increases profit. And all of a sudden, oh, that's why we went into business, was to make money. But gee, we can also create an environment that's supportive and bringing out the best in everybody. And here we go. You know, yeah.
Well,
All
you
right.
can tell that you have to dig into that PhD in psychology as you talk about it. I mean, seriously, I mean, that makes you an even better coach because you know all of that. You've got everything to go with it. I'm curious as you talk about it and you take the normal Joe Schmo, how long does it take you to guide someone into that highest level of leadership? Just on an average.
Yeah. Well, they come in usually really not wanting to come in. They come in, kind of angry or frightened that they have to do this. But within hours, all of a sudden they realize, well, the only thing I have to be afraid of is getting to know myself. And they're kind of enjoying that because that allows them to understand things that they've never understood and move beyond them. And so, literally within 2 months, we've created the foundation. They've healed enough, they understand enough. They
Mm.
doesn't mean other things aren't going to come up for the rest of their life, but they have the tools, the ability, the confidence to supportively handle those things. And so a couple months to get the foundation, and then the next shift I think takes about 9 months. And that's more of a how do I be mindful enough to catch myself when I'm slipping into these old patterns of not breathing, not dealing with things, when I'm not being present and consciously living. And that's, of course, I'm supporting, I've got, a whole program where they get modules and, they're on calls with me and all sorts of that. But it's just that repatterning that takes place. They become more mindful, they become more aware, and they mature in that way. They become more self-accepting, they become more patient, and everybody comes in because they want to make more money or something like that in their organization. But the truth is the within months, what they're recognizing is their relationship with their kids and their partner has just gotten so much better. And of course, the relationships in their work start to enhance too. And so, it's again, just as I said earlier, your relationship with yourself is going to be mirrored in your relationship with others. So, as you become a more conscious, aware, considerate, cooperative, more empathy for yourself, more compassion for yourself, that's going to spill over into your relationships with others. They,
Absolutely. So, Dr. Ron, where can people find more information about you and learn more about you? Where can they go?
I think the easiest thing is just to go to my website at ronstotts.com. And, there's stuff they can download for free that helps them begin that inner journey, and they begin to uh, get insight as to what they can do on their own. And for those who are in leadership levels, they begin to recognize, oh, this is I'm, the word I use is capacity. They recognize they need to increase the capacity, and that's exactly what I can comfortably and supportively guide them into and through.
Wonderful.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. their leadership skills could be what's stifling them, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm basically helping people just cross that threshold from fear into love and acceptance, moving from performing and into authentic presence, from pushing into alignment, from effort and deeper clarity, shifting to that position. And I mean, I just was on a call with a client that I haven't worked for a couple of years, and she's running into her next level of ready to expand. And all I'm doing is helping her remember to, I mean, she's doing an amazing job with, running a large corporation and all, and starting, something on her own too. But it's fun to watch them. I'm a big believer in we're not here to get caught in comfort zones. We're here to evolve and continue to grow and evolve. And that's it's fun to watch people move out of that fear-based, let me find a safe little cubbyhole to get stuck in, to recognizing that it's really about, well, what's my highest intention? And that highest intention is kind of what we can do from where we are. So the next one that I watch them evolve into is, well, what's my greatest aspiration? What do I need to breathe into and become so that I can create or accomplish that? And that becomes a life of passion. That becomes a life that's filled with gratitude because they begin to see that everything that's available to them, everything that comes into their life, isn't the challenge and thing that puts them in jeopardy that they used to think it was. It's really a supportive, it's there to support them in their growth. And so if you can, whatever comes into your life, if you can breathe into it and be
Yeah.
present, curious with it, it's going to support you in your growth and on your journey.
All right. Well, we appreciate it, Dr. Ron. Thanks again. And if
Yeah,
you want to find information on Sherry, you can go to storehousemediagroup.com to find out everything in podcasting, social media, website, and publishing, and much, much more. Thanks again, guys.
thank you.